Welcome all. Welcome, Adam.
Hello,
Here we
hello.
are.
First episode.
First episode. Whoop, whoop. I'm excited. We're going to talk about presuppositions of NLP. I trust that our listeners checked out our little intro we did to season 2. That'll give you an idea of what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah.
However, as we said, it's about getting back to those core learnings from NLP that have had such an impact on our life. And you know, it's like we said last week, it's those building blocks, isn't it? It's the foundation of actually changing your life, changing your world. Starts
Absolutely.
with these foundational assumptions that we're going to talk about today, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Changing the lens that we look at things through.
Oh, that's a bit sexy. I like that. Let's change the lens. Now, pre-frame, there are 14 of these presuppositions.
Yeah.
So we are going to do sort of 2 or 3 per episode. We're just going to see how time goes and how much faffing about Adam and I do about each of them.
Yeah.
Because we are mindset junkies. So once we get started, it can be difficult to shut us up.
Impossible, you mean?
Right, yeah. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So should we kick on?
Yeah, let's do it. So what's number 1?
Number 1, respect for the other person's model of the world. I've been caught out with this before, just from a linguistic perspective. I've caught myself when I'm talking to someone who's perhaps not NLP trained or familiar, and I'll give my opinion on something, and then I'll say, of course, that's purely my model of the world. And then you get that lovely little head cock. What's that there? So, being aware of lingo, I'd love to really break this down. Firstly, I guess what model of the world means, and then what it means to have that number 1 assumption when you're going into real change in yourself.
Yes.
Respecting the other person's model of the world. So, Adam, what do you feel model of the world really means?
Well, I mean, this is one of my favorites, I guess. But you know, what I like about this principle is it underlines the importance of acknowledging and valuing the unique, because we're all unique, right? You know, unique perspectives, beliefs, experiences, and those those perceptual filters through which other people, us all, how we all view the world. So
Yes.
it's a recognition that each person's understanding and interpretation of reality is shaped by a complex mix of personal history, cultural background, emotional states, and cognitive processes. So, it's fundamental. I think, which is probably presupposition number 1. That's how I would look at it.
Yeah. I agree. It is number 1 for a reason. And I liked, when I was listening to you talk there, model of the world is really about perspective.
Yes.
It's how a person views and therefore lives in their world.
Yeah.
And it's understanding that the way you view something, whether it be an event that's happening or a rule or a relationship, how you view it is simply your perspective on it.
Yeah.
That's it. And it's not right, it's not wrong. It's simply that. It's your model. It's how you have made sense of that situation.
Yeah.
So once you can really understand that concept, then I think it allows us to have a lot more openness and empathy when communicating with another person, because they are going to have their own model, the way that they make sense of the world around them. And
Yeah.
for me, this number one is what allowed me to switch from judgment to curiosity,
Yes.
which is huge because we've
Huge.
discussed this before in this podcast of how much of a budgie jitch I can be, can all be. Anyway, and so to move from being judgmental about, someone who has a different perspective to you, a different understanding, a different manner about them, different belief system, instead of judging them because it's different and therefore unknown to you or fearful or whatever meaning you give it, instead of judging that, you can become curious. Think, wow, how did they construct that? What's the
Yeah.
scaffolding of their model that allows them to believe that or to feel that or to respond with that?
Yeah.
You can
Because
learn so much more.
reality is constructed. Everybody's reality is different, and it's constructed based on their belief systems. Their learned behavior. We are a product of our environment. So
Mm.
so for what I like about it is, first of all, it's about you just said it. It's about having empathy, but it's really listening and empathy. Because truly listening to understand someone's perspective without immediately judging or dismissing it, that
Yeah.
involves empathy.
Yeah.
So that's where you attempt to see the world through the other person's eyes, and really appreciate their feelings and their viewpoints. And then it's about being flexible with language, so using language that acknowledges the subjective nature of experience, so to speak. So for
Yeah.
example, what do I mean? Rather than asserting that universal truth, an NLP practitioner might use phrases like from your perspective, or as you see it, to validate the other person's viewpoint.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
keeping it flexible around that, and then being open to curiosity. So like you said, being curious versus judgmental. That gives it and gives that openness to learn from the other person's experiences and viewpoints, rather than just trying to impose your own model of the world on them, so to speak.
Yes. And something that I think is really key about, so the beginning of this presupposition is respect for the
Yeah,
other person's model of the world. And something that I think is key about respect, it's having such a confidence in your own identity that you can be open to respecting and learning from another person's perspective without feeling like you have to change your own.
absolutely. Well,
So many people get scared of
yeah,
that, don't they? They think if
yeah,
they listen to someone's perspective, then they're going to be talked into changing, or I'm going to have to change my. You don't have to do anything.
no, but it's about being adaptable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Having that approach allows for true adaptability when you're not afraid, but you know loosely with that loose meaning,
Yeah.
being willing to adapt your communication style, and any interventions you're trying to do, but you're being adaptable with your communication style to
Mm.
better align with the other person's model of the world. You therefore can facilitate understanding, and rapport. And rapport is a key fundamental thing. We've got to have rapport first, and we'll cover that in another episode, I'm sure.
For
Um, but you avoid assumptions that
Yeah.
way as well. So recognizing that assumptions about what others are thinking, or feeling, or or believing, I guess, that might be
Yeah.
incorrect and they're not incorrect. It just is what they're thinking and believing and perceiving.
Well,
We then strive to understand their perspective directly through that dialogue.
yeah, well, like you said, what we're doing there is mind reading, aren't we?
Yeah,
And so when we mind read something without getting curious and asking the question, when we mind read it, we are then filtering it through our belief system, our
yes,
values, our model of the world.
yeah,
So we really haven't stepped into theirs. We haven't had the empathy then, have we?
no,
We've simply taken something and twisted it to suit our narrative,
yeah,
and therefore respect is out the window because
yeah,
we've adjusted it to make it suit and feel better for us and look better for our model of the world. Whereas
yeah,
the adaptability is about, parking your model of the world, not dismissing your own, simply parking it and getting curious about how does that person's model of the world be constructed? How is it constructed? And
absolutely.
having respect for that. I think you can learn so much, right?
Learn so much. It's not just about politeness or
Mm,
ethical communication. What? It's a it really is it's a practical approach that
mm.
really um, um, enhances, I guess, the effectiveness of the interactions. Whether that's if you're in therapy, in a coaching situation, conflict resolution, or dealing with your wife or your husband or your girlfriend or your boyfriend.
In the
Um,
workplace,
in the
whatever.
workplace, everywhere, everyone you're dealing
Yeah.
with. It really helps in building that rapport and fostering that mutual understanding, and then facilitating that positive outcome
Mm.
in the interpersonal dynamics, I guess.
Do you know something that's really cool to do as well when you are practicing? Because all of these take awareness first, don't they? You've got to be aware of the actual principle itself, and then how you adapt and how you apply it, I guess, in your own life.
Yeah,
And so when you're respecting another person's model of the world, somewhere that's quite a safe space to practice and build that muscle is actually with kids,
yeah,
because kids will construct their own model of the world. And you see this, don't you, when kids will have an absolute mental breakdown because they wanted the green cup, for goodness sake, Mum, and you gave me the orange one. What are you thinking? And that the world has come to an end for them because you have the
yeah,
wrong cup. And rather than judging that as, if only you knew how little that problem is. See how straight away that's putting judgment and dismissing their model of the world. It's a great place to practice, as I said, to build that muscle
right.
in dissociating a little bit, taking a step back and thinking about, now, how is that such a big problem for my little person there? Just build the muscle, just practice and have fun with it. But it's a safe space to do it because it tends to be lower in judgment, doesn't it? Like you don't get
Yeah,
as offended, I suppose, by a kid's model of the world. You know,
makes sense.
you're more frustrated with it than offended. However, with adults, it can be really difficult if you haven't worked the muscle. It's difficult to dissociate and not get caught up in the content and the emotion of it all, where you just want to, smack someone's face because you're like, "Ugh, why are you breathing?" So kids is a great place to have fun with that first presupposition and build the muscle, in my
Awesome.
opinion. In my model of the world, Adam,
Love it.
that's
Love it. And I respect that.
thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, brilliant. Are you happy with that? Happy
I'm
with
happy with
number
that.
one?
I'm happy with number
Brilliant.
one. Yeah. What's number two?
Let's do number two. Number two is behavior and change are to be evaluated in terms of context and ecology.
Yes.
Behavior and change are to be evaluated in terms of context and ecology.
Hmm.
So, okay, let's break that down. Context first. Well, I just want to show the difference in regards to context and content, because they get mixed up a little bit, I feel. So if we're talking about behavior and change and evaluating them in context, it's, is the behavior or is the change suited for the context you're in? For the an example can be, I remember I had done a timeline therapy session with a client, and the emotion we're working on was sadness. And so we did the timeline therapy, and we came back and we tested and everything. And then after the testing, she said, no, there's still some sadness in my past. It hasn't all gone. I've still got sadness. I said, oh, okay. Can you tell me what is the event that you're going back to where there's still sadness? She said, oh, it was my mum's funeral. Right. So the context of that, it's appropriate to feel sadness.
Yeah.
That behavior is appropriate in that context of a funeral. You would expect people to feel sad, wouldn't you?
Of course.
So that's what we're talking about when you are evaluating behavior, when you are looking at, is that behavior appropriate? Think of context whilst you're doing that as well, for yourself and for others. Is it appropriate for this context or not? So that's one of the evaluations. And then the other one is ecology. So there are 4 levels of ecology: individual, family, community, and global. So when we are evaluating someone's behavior or our own behavior and the change that we might be going through, the way we're going to change our behaviors or change our perspectives or outlook or even our whole trajectory of life, is it appropriate for me as an individual, for my family, for the community that I'm involved in, and globally? Is it a good thing? Am I doing a good thing globally? Or am I unleashing freaking terror on the world with no comeback, with no fear of repercussions?
Yeah.
That's how I see this number 2, about evaluating appropriateness of behavior and an appropriate change in regards to context and ecology. What about you, Adam? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, yeah, ecology, in this context, I think, it's, assessing that the impact of any change on the overall system, so, if they change X, Y, Z, what direct impact is that going to have, and are we prepared for that? If we're evaluating someone's values, we've got to be careful about those, because we can change the hierarchy of those, and then what's that going to mean across the board? So the ecological check, I guess, is that process used to ensure that that proposed change is congruent with that individual's life, I guess,
Yeah,
that's probably the best way of trying. Those are the words I'm looking for. Congruent with the individual's life. Is it promoting balance and well-being rather than causing any unintended, negative consequences?
Yeah, love that. Is the outcome congruent and positive?
Yes.
And is it congruent and positive on an individual level, on a family level, on a community level, and on a global level?
Yeah. So, so a strategy, so in terms of like context, the strategies for change are not universally effective, but they do depend on specific circumstances or settings in which they can be applied. So, for example, a strategy for stress management might work really well in a personal setting, but absolutely not work very well in a professional one.
Yeah.
So, understanding that context really helps tailor the interventions or the changes that you're going to be making for greater, what's the word? Efficacy.
Yeah, I like that. It's this number 2, presupposition. It's making you aware, isn't it, that it's not really a one size fits all. When you're looking at change, it's almost checking off, how is this going to look and how is this going to work and what is the outcome in these different areas, of life, and ensuring that it's going to be positive and forward moving in all those different areas, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I like that. That's really good. I love it.
Yeah,
Well,
awesome.
yeah. Are you happy with that one? How do you feel
Yeah,
about that?
I'm cool. I'm cool with that one. I get, like, just to wrap it up. It's just on the back of this one. It's that call to move away from a one size fits all solution,
Yeah.
because it doesn't, toward that more thoughtful, adaptive, um, sustainable kind of practice. I guess is probably a little summary. It just came to me.
I love it. That's brilliant. That's really good. So that was number 2. Behaviour and change are to be evaluated in terms of context and ecology.
Marvelous.
Marvellous.
Marvelous.
Brilliant.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll see everybody next episode.
We're going to stop at 2, are we? You feeling good
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, I think so.
Love it. All right, brilliant. So when you come back, episode 3, when you come back and join us, we're going to move on to a couple more, and we're going to be talking about things like rapport, when communication feels forced,
Yeah.
how that fits into what we're talking about, and we're going to hit that beautiful chestnut that you love to talk about. People are not their behaviours. So
Oh,
we're going to
yeah.
knock that one on the head as well. That's always going to juicy
I love that
episode.
one.
Yeah. I look forward to that. I'll see you next week.
All right, guys. See you later.
Bye.